Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
How's the audio quality? Any better? I bought these headphones. Hopefully it'll be better recording. We'll see. All right, excellent. Thank you for joining me again today. All right, excellent. Thank you. Let me set this up. Let's see. Turn on the chat. Turn on screen sharing. Let's minimize this. Okay. All right. Let's see. Chat. Let's move this over. Okay. Let's see. All right. All right. Can you all see my screen? All right. Awesome. Okay. Let me mute this. Okay. All right. Yeah. Welcome back. Let's see. Let's review where we were last week, and where we're gonna what are we doing today, and where we're going. Let's see. So yeah, last week we got started. It was our first lecture, and we covered the first assignment, which was basically setting up the development environment that we're going to be working on this throughout the semester, or at least half of it, right? Which was the creating the React web app front end part of the overall application that we're going to be working on this semester. Towards halfway through the semester, we'll create another Node.js application, but that will be for the server, right? So most web applications, have those two pieces, right? It has the front end part of the application, which is typically running some browser application running on your browser using some form of JavaScript, some library. We happen to be using React.js. There's quite a few others out there that are competing libraries, and that runs on your browser. And because it runs on the browser, it has quite a few limitations, right? It doesn't have access to the file system, can't store anything in the database, keep track of any state information. It can maintain a user interface and maintain a state within that application. But for doing anything serious, it needs to have the support of some middle tier, some server running on a separate machine. So that part we're going to be talking about it halfway through the semester. We'll talk about Node.js, creating servers, web APIs, RESTful APIs, and whatnot. Okay, so the first half just focuses on building the front end. Anyway, so we talked about the course in general. We demonstrated how to set up the web application, right? And we deployed it for you, and we made available the video recording of that lecture. I do hear some folks in the background. If you could all mute, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, I still hear folks. Not sure if I can mute here. How can I mute? Can I mute others? Yeah, can you please all mute somebody? I can hear you, either you're eating or doing something. Could you please mute? Okay, thank you. Okay, stop. Let's see. All right, so let's keep going. I did make available the source code from what we worked on together last lecture. You can access it through here. So this is the source code that we worked on last lecture, and it's now available here if you want to take a look at it. There's a hyperlink here at the top of the modules. Also, I made available the actual application running on Netlify, and here it is. It's just the boilerplate React.js application that we built using Create React App, right? And so again, for this first assignment, your two deliverables are just this URL, right, and the repository, this URL, right, where the React.js is running, and the URL where the GitHub repository is publicly available. Right, you could just copy those two things and submit it as if they were just plain text. The TAs are just gonna, click on those hyperlinks. They're gonna come and visit, right, the GitHub repository and your application, and just give you full credit for that. All right, that's easy, and that's, I believe, it's due this at the end of this this week. All right. All right, so let's move on. Okay, there's a question on the chat. Did you want us to add the title? No, I mean, you're free to, pretty much do whatever you want in there. Just don't go crazy. Just enough so the TAs can look at it and say, yeah, they deployed a React application. You want to start exploring on what you can do and whatnot. If you feel confident enough to play around, sure, go ahead, knock yourself out. But what the TAs are looking for is, were you able to deploy a React application on Netlify? Since haven't submitted, added the submitted, is that fine? I haven't added and submitted. Yeah, you need to submit at some point, right, before the end of this week. So you have still time to the end of this week. Where do we have to submit these links? As part of the first assignment. So if you go to your assignment, and let's see, student, I'm going to look at the student. Oops. Modules, home. Looks like something's here. Page not found. Huh? Assignments. Can you see the assignments? Okay, first assignment. And you can start the assignment, and then you can paste in here the two URLs, right? The URL for the GitHub and the URL for the Netlify, and then submit the assignment. Okay. This is that's what I did. Can we submit a text entry? Yes, you can submit into a text entry box in Canvas. Yep, right here, the text entry right here. You just paste it right here. Oh yeah, exactly. Text entry. Very good. Yes. Do we need to add the TAs as collaborators on our Git? Not yet, since it's public. If you do need help from a TA, you might want to add them as collaborators so that they could pull down your code and fix something, and then they can push their results back into your repository. So if you're going to have a session with their TAs or myself as well, yes, you could add us as collaborators, and we will be able to modify your repository and fix anything, and push the results right back into the repository. Okay. All right. So let's move on. Okay. Let's see. All right. So let's take a look at, this is the last week. Last week was the week number 0. We're going to start looking at week number 1. So the focus of these of the first half of the semester is working on the front end, right? And the second half is on the server. So one of the first basic skills that we need to learn is, how do we build front ends in the for our web applications? And the basic skill is to learn about HTML, right? So the focus of this week will be learning about all the basics about HTML. We are going to keep using it throughout the semester. So not only the material that we're going to look at this week, but we're going to be adding more and more skills throughout the semester. Although the basics, the core competency is, we're going to learn it this week. All right. So HTML, as the slides suggest, stands for hypertext markup language. Okay, and what right? So that's what the acronym stands for, and just be ready for in the quiz. You will be asked, right? What does HTML stand for? That's a core thing that you should know, what your acronyms, at least what your acronyms mean, right? And what it means is that, notice that the HT here is really a compound word, hypertext. So it's really three words, of which the first one is a compound word. And what hypertext means, way back when, in the 80s, when folks were coming up with ideas on how to create documents that were somehow related to one another, and they were saying, "Oh, would it be nice if I'm looking at this slide, and then there might be some, would it be nice if, as I'm talking about HTML, perhaps that text itself, if I click on it, somehow there's an action that loads additional content, maybe takes me to a separate screen or a separate slide that talks more about the details about HTML. So that idea, it existed even before the web, right? Folks were, just imagining, right, what the documents of the future might look like, right, and how might they behave. So hypertext had been existing, in the 80s. Before then, by the time Tim Berners-Lee got to invent this language and the World Wide Web, right? The idea of hypertext already was in the vocabulary, and it just meant just plain text like this, right? Just text that it's just for reading purposes. But other text was hyper, meaning there was some action associated with it, right? That when you clicked on it, something happened. It was hyper. There was a verb or an action associated. What markup language means, well, obviously language means it's a computer language, right? It's a way of you describing things, of explaining something to who, in this case, to a computer. Just like Java or C# or whatever. Those are programming languages that you tell the computers what steps to follow to accomplish an algorithm. This one was a language for marking up, meaning to add a look and feel meaning to text, right? That you want to tell this text that it should be underlined, right? Or that it should be bold, or that should be bulleted, or it should be italic, right? And that these are, or to tell the computer, lay it out and render it as a bullet, right? And or render this in the center, or render this in yellow and whatnot, right? So the hypertext markup language was invented for that purpose, right? And it's used throughout. Anything that you consume on the web, on a browser, is drawn using this language anywhere you go, right? So for instance, this right here, this canvas, you can take a look at what HTML was used to render this page, right? So you can, if you right click on the screen, right, there's an inspect, right? So this tool, most browsers will have it. In some browsers, you might need to enable it or give permissions and say that you're a developer and you want to use this tool here. So basically, any browser, if you right click on the screen, you can say inspect, right? So when you inspect, an additional screen appears, and this is kind of like a looking at the behind the curtain, right, or behind the veil of what is the code that generated this world, right? This content. Okay, notice that as I highlight, as I hover over this, right? This up here, it highlights the content. It says that this div here, right, and this other div, this div is renders this portion, and this other div renders this other portion. Okay, and you can and so what is this that we're reading? Well, this is HTML, right? Notice all these pointy brackets. So HTML is based on the general language XML, right? Extensible markup language. which is made up of all bunch of pointy brackets, right, that allow you to describe certain contents, right? So for instance, if you hover over these slides and you to inspect, notice that it's right here. See that slide, right? That's the text right there. The text is just the text, but then around it you have these pointy brackets that start here, right, and ends here. See that this is the opening tag, and then this is the closing tag. So it's wrapped, the text, the regular text slides, right? It's wrapped around an opening tag and a closing tag, right? And it tells us something about the text, right? It's telling us this is not ordinary text. It's text that has a title, right? It has a class, whatever that means. We'll learn that a little later. And there's a whole bunch of these. Right? So notice that this is for the slide, right? Let's see. Notice these line items. See these line items? Each one of these line items is rendering a different line item here, right? And they're all inside of a UL, meaning an unordered list. So these things is an unordered list, right, of items. Okay, a whole bunch of items. Yeah. And so somebody had to write this, all this code that renders this screen, or what most likely is that nobody actually wrote this code. Instead, they wrote programs or pieces of code, most likely written in JavaScript or some server-side programming language that dynamically or programmatically generates this HTML, right? And the browser, takes all that HTML that comes from either written by hand or written by a robot, reads all that text, right, and then renders it as specified, right, as the HTML tells us. Make sense? Now, this down here, notice that it's nicely, you can collapse it, you can you navigate inside. So it's kind of like a hierarchical tree, right? Of if I go all the way to the top, right, there'll be a root, right, that encompasses the entire right hand side, right? And notice that this is the left side. See that? So as we go up higher in the root of this document, right, of this hierarchical, right? Notice main is both, right, the left and the right. Notice there's a wrapper that kind of like wraps the whole thing. At some point, you reach the very, very tippy top, right? That it's the entire document, and eventually the body. So the body is the root as far as you can go up the chain, right? And that of the content that you see. And you'll notice that all HTML documents start with this root HTML tag that has a head and a body, right? So all HTML documents have a head and a body, right? Where the head, notice that if I hover over it, it doesn't render anything, right? It doesn't highlight. So this is all, the head just contains generic or meta information, right, about maybe who the author is, maybe other documents that are needed to render this, maybe some JavaScripts, maybe some links, other documents, styling sheets that tells us what color these fonts should be, what how much padding, and what is the margin, and all that stuff is inside of these JavaScript. These are font files, right? Lots and lots of scripts and lots of links, right, and meta information. So that's all in the head. That's all in the head. And then in the body is the actual rendering of the actual content that is meant to be seen by human beings, right, inside of the body. And this is still the root, right? So these divs, is a divisor, or it allows HTML documents to create logical rectangular portions of the screen these are generic rectangular portions of the screen that you can then go in and is divided and subdivided and subdivided, and then fill them up with whatever content you need. Okay. And so what this first week, we're going to be learning about all these tags, right? But I did want to point out is that this hierarchy of tags is a in-memory representation of the document. Okay, this is the visual representation of the document, whereas this is the logical or object representation of the document, right? So in this object here, right, with its hierarchy, its tree-like structure is referred to as the DOM, D-O-M, right, which stands for Document Object Model, right? Document Object Model, and this DOM is what browsers they parse all these HTML, ASCII text files, right, from the server, right, and then once they parse it, they generate this DOM, which is their interpretation of the document, right? Now this document might it might be a cleaned up version of the document, because the document that comes from the server might have errors or syntax mistakes, whatnot. The browser will make its best effort at interpreting the HTML that's coming from the server, and what you see here in the DOM is its interpretation of the ASCII text that is coming from the server. Okay. Now, if you go here, you'll notice that as I mentioned, right, you have lots of content here. Let's see. Right, so this is looks like this is the root. This is the kind of like the left hand side, and this is the right hand side. And in the right hand side, notice that there's all these divs in the center. Notice that this div is this particular content here, which has these. I'm just using my mouse, my keyboard to navigate through this DOM object, right? I'm expanding, and what I wanted to show you is that notice that I'm highlighting each one of the elements here. See that? And I could, just select this and modify it, right? If I go and, for instance, this is for the slides, right? If I open it up and I go down to where the text is actually there, let's see, text. Here's the text, right? And where are you? That's the text, somewhere in there. There it is, slides, right? And I could modify the DOM manually, and I say these are the HTML slides. Okay, notice that modifying the DOM, right, is then reflected immediately up here in the rendering of the screen. Okay, now I did this manually right here in the DOM. Now if I refresh the screen, it's going to go back to the server and get the original document, right? I'm going to lose the modification, right? So I have not permanently made any changes, right? I'm only modifying the in-memory representation of the document, and so this is in no way making it permanent, right? I could even just remove this entire element, right? This li, I could remove it. I can say, I can blow it away. I can say delete. It's gone. Notice that immediately it removes it from the user interface, right? So the trick that we're going to be learning about later on when we get to JavaScript, right, in about a couple weeks, is I could. We're going to be learning how we can use JavaScript to programmatically manipulate the DOM, right? So that we could, render anything we want, right? That's what exactly what JavaScript does, what React does, right? It's that they have hooks and logic and libraries that can that simplify on how to generate content, edit content, delete content, update content, right? This all these tags programmatically, functionally, using JavaScript, all with the intention of modifying the DOM. Okay, notice if I refresh, this whole thing will be re-rendered, and there's my slides back there. Make sense? And the only way to modify this permanently would be to, any changes that I make to the DOM logically is to go back to the server and then say, hey, server, make these changes permanently. right? And we will learn about that in the second half of the semester, right? All the all what we're going to be learning the first half of the semester is how to make changes on the fly, but there won't be any way for us to make any save any of that, not until we see servers and databases and whatnot. Okay. All right. Excellent. So that's an overview of HTML, and how it relates to browsers, how it's rendered, the DOM, uh, and that's all available again. If you right click and go to inspect, you can see the editor at the bottom. It's the inspector, sometimes we refer to as the inspector. And this is going to be your best friend throughout the semester, right? The inspector. And you can see source code. There's JavaScript. You can step through it. There's like an editor. A debugger that allows you to step through the code. You can see the style as well. Another name that we're going to be using quite a bit, instead of saying that these are tags, we're going to be referring to these things as elements. All right. Tag. These tags here is just a textual ASCII representation of elements. Elements are just very general nodes in a tree, right? Where you have a root of the tree, and then all these nodes are connected to each other, right? From the root, and then you have all these branches in the DOM, right? And these nodes in the DOM are referred to as elements. Okay. Now, how are they rendered in an ASCII file? They're rendered as tags, like an opening tag and a closing tag, right? And we are going to be learning about that. So tags or elements have a name, right? So the name of this tag is iframe. The name of this element is form, and each one does different things. So input fields are for being able to input text. Divs are for breaking up pieces of content, and each element has attributes. In this class, this is a class attribute, and there's a tab index attribute. This is a style attribute, and attributes have names, like class, right? Tab indexes are the names of the attributes, and then they have values of the attributes. So you have a name value, and these attributes configure, right, the element, right? So it changes behavior, so that you can set up set up its behavior. Let's use a question in the chat. Would it be correct to say that tags are textual representation of the more dynamic? Yes. Yeah. Instead of dynamic idea, the more generic idea of elements. Yep. And elements is a special case of a node in some hierarchy. And the hierarchy happens to be called the DOM, used in the context of rendering HTML documents. Yep. Excellent. Thanks, Ryan. All right, excellent. So let's now that we've talked about in general what HTML is, I am going to wait going over the slides formally. I want to make sure that I present the upcoming assignment, the HTML assignment, so you can get started. And most of you should be finishing up the first assignment and getting up to speed to get started on the next one. So I'd like to make sure I cover that. So let's take a look at the upcoming assignment. Let's so this would be assignment number 2. Okay. So assignment number 2, the intent is for you to practice HTML and become familiar with the vocabulary, what it is, and like all assignments, there are 3 parts to the assignment, right? The lab part, the tutor part, and then the challenge. And the intent is the lab is going to be several generic, kind of like throwaway sample code where you will practice certain skills, right? And then you're asked where we babysit you and we walk you through the whole process of exactly what you have to copy and paste, right? And you just have to verify that that it's behaving as is supposed to behave. Then the second part called Twitter or Twitter, it's an ongoing assignment that we're going to be working on throughout the entire semester. It's an application that is based on a popular social network application that has been in the news for the last couple of months, and not sure where that's going to happen, what's going to happen there. But anyway, so we're going to be using Twitter as a to learn on to practice applying what we learn in lab, right? Which is in this document. We're gonna you're going to apply what you learn in the lab and to build Twitter on your own. Okay. So yeah. And I'll explain all that. And now the labs are all one-offs, right? They're all unrelated. They they introduce you to specific skills, right? Whereas Twitter or Twitter, it's an application that builds on the previous assignments, right? This being the first assignment where we're actually going to start working on Twitter, right? But you'll see that upcoming assignments also have a Twitter section, right? That builds on what you did on the previous assignment, okay? And they're all cumulative. And so as we move from one assignment to the next, we're just going to be adding a little more, right? Just to practice whatever skills we learn on that particular assignment. Okay, this assignment is about HTML. Next assignment will be about CSS, then Bootstrap, JavaScript, React, and so on and so forth. And in each one, you're expected to apply what you learn in the Twitter application. Then for graduate students, okay, not for undergraduate students, but for graduate students, there will be a challenge section that is required where you will be exposed to additional features of the HTML language that might be a little more fringe, that are not perhaps part of the core competency that you would be expected to know, but certainly it expands on what on your skill set, and also make it a little bit more challenging for the graduate folks, and not so as much for the undergraduate students. So what you're being asked for is to keep working on the same React.js application that you started in the previous assignment. So we're always going to use the same application, right, for the front end application. We'll then switch over to the server side. That's halfway at the second half of the semester. But for the first half, we're all going to be working in the same Twitter React web app. Now I have my own version, which is called Twitter React Web App 5610 FA22, right? And it's the same what we worked on last week, the last lecture. So we're going to keep working in there, and for each assignment, you're going to create a separate directory. So for instance, this would be the second assignment, A2, and let's see, this should be in its own branch right now. Git branch. This is maybe a little bit too small. Maybe you should make sure you can see it here. Oops, let me move this out of the way. Okay, so git branch. So we are on the main branch. Okay, so since that was for the first assignment, for the second assignment, we're going to be creating another branch. Right? We're going to create a branch number A2, right, for assignment A2, so we can say git status. Is there anything? Okay, I'm up to date. I have published everything. I say git checkout. Create a new branch and call it A2. And I'm going to do all my work in A2. Right. So notice that I'm switched to branch A2. Okay. And what will happen is that each week you'll work on that branch A2, A3, A4, right? And you will push this to the repository so that TAs can always see what you've accomplished so far in that branch, right? And the idea is that A2 will contain the content of the first for the main branch, then A3 will contain the content of A2, A4 will contain the content of A2 and A3, and so on and so forth, right? So it'll be all cumulative all the way through. So each assignment has its own branch. Yep. And also each assignment is deployed to its own Netlify version, right? We'll see in a minute that Netlify can be configured, right? So that when you deploy, right, each branch will be deployed to a separate branch, right? With the name of the branch as part of the URL. Yes. So that you can keep working on assignment 2, 3, and so forth, even though you might not have been graded yet for assignment 1, 2, 3, and so or the previous ones, right? So you don't have to worry about that because they're all going to be segregated into separate branches and into separate URLs. Okay. Actually, let me see if Netlify is indeed configured to do that. Let me go to Netlify and log in. Which one was it? It's this one. It's the Roaring Hummingbird. Okay. Okay. It's this one. So if I go in there, if you go to site settings and you go to build and deploy, you can say build saying branches. You can say control which branches, yada, 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 production branch deploys, deploy only the power. Okay, yeah, you can say edit settings, right? In branches, you can say edit settings, and you can, yes, maybe, no, okay. You can say branch deploys, none, blah, 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 all, there we go. Deploy all branches, push to the repository, save. Okay, so now each branch will be deployed to a separate URL, right? So the base one is deployed here, and Roaring Hummingbird something something something. Branch A2 will be deployed to something like A2 dash Roaring Hummingbird yada 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 yada, right? So that you can leave alone what we did for assignment 1, right? And now focus on A2, A3, A4 independently of what previously happened. It says, so you mean we check out from A2 branch, not me. Yes, exactly. So from the previous one. Now it might be that how depending how comfortable you feel with your Git skills, right? If you already have a grade for assignment 1 and assignment 2, right, and you're all set, something that you might want to do, right, is to merge each branch back to main, right? So for instance, if you got a grade for A2, you could merge A2 into main, right? If you get a grade of A3, then you can merge A3 back into main, right? And the idea of that is that main now would always have the very latest, right? So that if anybody goes to the main screen, so you'll be able to see that. But I'm not going to require that. Depending on how comfortable you feel with merging and things like that. This is not software engineering, where we go deep into branching and merging and cherry picking and conflict resolution. I mean, I don't know how comfortable you feel with those skills, and so I only care about each branch being separate, right, and each assignment of being available in different URLs, right? So for instance, if I make a difference, if I make a change to the A2, now I'm in A2, so I can say git branch. I'm in A2, I believe. Oh, never mind. I'm in git branch. There we go. I'm in A2. So if I make changes here, and I go to my index, and I say, let's see, I go to my source and I go to my app.js where I say, welcome to blah, 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 blah. And I say, or leave it there. I can say maybe H2, this is branch A2, the branch for assignment 2. Okay, I can commit that and say git status. I've modified that. I can say git add, so it's been added. I can say git commit, added change to assignment 2. All right, and I can say git push. Right, so this is going to push. It's going to say, oh, you want to push to branch A2, and say, yep, I want to do that. I select that. Say copy paste. That's going to push to it's asking me to sign in the browser. I think I'm already signed in. I am. Okay, there we go. Notice that if we go back to our GitHub, we can let's see, tweet there. This one right here. And you'll notice that now we have A2. See, that's now there's 2 branches, main and A2. And main still has my source code with the old content, right? That still has my, welcome to web dev, blah, 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 blah. But if I go to my A2 branch, you'll notice that the same file, right, has this H2. See that? And so if we go to Netlify, you'll notice that if you go to my deploys, notice that this is what was published in the previous one that which we submitted. It's this, right? So this is still working, right? This is from our main branch. Welcome to web dev, blah 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 blah. But notice that there was a second deployment. This one, see that? This just deployed. And it deployed to branch A2. See that? From this commit, right? So it's from this commit right here, from this commit, this last commit that I had. So it deployed to the second branch, which open branch deploy, blah, 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 blah. Is it done? New, okay, I don't know if it's finished. Finish processing build request, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so it looks like it's done. So play game. Where are you? Where's my A2 open branch deploy? Okay, there we go. Okay, notice that this does have my change, right? This is branch for assignment 2. Notice that it's the same URL as before. The only difference is that it prepends, right, at the name, puts A2 in front of it. See that? So that now these could coexist. This is the no, not that one. This one. This is a roaring hummingbird from last assignment, and this is the same content, right? But slightly modified for the second assignment. Make sense? All right. Okay. Yeah. So this is for the second assignment. This is what you're going to submit, right? This URL is slightly different than the one before. The only difference is that it's got A2 in front of it. Make sense? Everybody good? Yeah, leave everything deployed, right? So you'll have main, A2, A3, A4, and 5 all deployed. So the TAs can go and grade you. Do we leave A2 branch after merge and not delete it? Yeah, leave it there. Don't remove the branch. Again, this is not a software engineering course. If this is software engineering, then yes. All these branches in software engineering, we would call them feature branches, right? Where you're working on a particular feature, right? And once you're done, typically after it goes through source control and goes through code review, and everybody accepts it, and you get graded by your peers and saying, yeah, good, that's a great. Then basically that branch gets merged back into main, and main gets redeployed, right? You could do that, and usually the owner of the branch removes the feature branch and it's done, right? we're not doing that. Leave all the branches so that TAs can go back and grade, take a look at, from previous branches, what the progress. So again, please do not remove your branches. Leave them there. We need them for historic purposes. Okay. All right. Let's see. What are we asked to do for this assignment? So for the first assignment, we're going to be first working on the labs, and we want you to practice some skills on HTML, right? So playing around with HTML. Okay. And the first thing that we're going to ask you to do is to play around with headers, right? So, or headings, sorry, not headers. And what headings are is something you're very familiar with. This right here is a heading, yeah. There's different size headings, right? This one is a heading 1, and this is a heading 2, right? There's a heading 1. There might be a heading 3 somewhere in here, maybe, maybe not. Oh, there was a heading 3. Okay. And what we use these headings for in documents is to introduce content, or introduce a topic, a subtopic, a subtopic, right? And so similarly in HTML, we do the same thing, right? So to do that in HTML, we use special tags, which are these right here. H1 is for heading 1, size, big, bold letters, and then heading 2, right? So smaller letters. So we ask you to practice all these things. Okay. So we ask you to create a new directory A2, right, where you're gonna do all your work on the labs, right? So let's do that. I'm just gonna get you going here. I'm gonna say public, and we're gonna say new directory A2, right? And in here we're gonna say I'm gonna create a document here, index. Okay. And here we're going to ask you to just start pasting a couple of these H1 and H2 inside of the body, right? All this is meant to go inside of the main content of the HTML document. You remember, this is an HTML document. HTML documents start with an opening HTML tag, right? Here's the closing one. And then it contains two elements in there, the head and the body, right? The head, as I discussed, contains some high-level, generic, meta information, who the author is, the name of the page, right? Any dependencies with other documents, CSS files, JavaScript files, whatnot, right? And then body actually contains the main content, right? So I'm asking you to paste most of the content that you see here in the assignment, to paste them inside of the body, right? So inside of the body tag, okay? So it looks something like this. And then I believe for this assignment, at first I ask you to copy the content of the first paragraph here, right? The first paragraph, highlight it. So I'm going to do just that. So I'm going to paste that. Notice that it doesn't wrap around. Okay, so how do I see this content? How do I see that? So the couple things. One of the things that we're going to do is we're going to modify index.html. If you remember, index.html is under public directory, and as we described last week in the last lecture, index is the entry point of the whole thing, of the entire web application, right? It's a standard file name, right? It's a standard server file that the server understands that that's the entry point. That's the first page that gets rendered on the screen. And right now it's got this div with this root, right? That we already saw, right? This is where some of the React.js magic happens, right? That is going to dynamically inject content in there that lives under the source directory under the index, right? We talked about this last lecture, right? That index then renders wherever's inside of the app, right? Which is this over here, okay? Which is what we're seeing right now. That's what's being rendered right there, okay? So what we're going to do is that we're not going to work with React.js, right, until a couple of weeks from now, right? So for now, we're just going to stay inside of public HTML, okay? And we're going to ignore, for now, the React stuff, okay? So one way to quickly ignore it is to go into the public. And for now, we're going to we're going to comment out, right, the div root. If we save there and we go back to our content, it's gone. There's nothing being rendered, right? React.js is looking for this div. It can't find it, so there's nowhere for it to put and render the content dynamically, which is fine, right? What we're going to do is that index is going to be our entry point of all the labs that we're going to be working for the next couple of weeks, right? So we're going to do here maybe an H1 that says, welcome to web dev. Okay. So if I go back, notice that indeed there it is. Welcome to web dev. And then in here we're going to add hyperlinks. We're going to create links that allow us to see our assignment to index.html, right? So that the TAs can find your assignment, right? So that TAs can come to your landing page, right? This is the entry point, and then be able to navigate to assignment 2, assignment 3, assignment 4, assignment 5, and so on, right? So for instance, this would be assignment 2, but I'd like to be able to click it, right, and navigate to my assignment 2. Where is my assignment 2? It's under A2 index. So how do we do that? We can create a hyperlink. A is a tag for the tag anchor, for the element anchor, right? That allows you to refer to other documents and navigate programmatically. So I can say A, right, and I can wrap the text and tell the browser, hey browser, I want you to render this as a hyperlink that if I click it, it's going to go somewhere. Right now, it's not doing anything, And that's because I'm missing something. I need to configure it and tell it, where do you want to go? If you click on assignment 2, I want to go to href as a hypertext reference. I'm referencing, and what I want to do is navigate right from where I am right now and go under A2 and into index.html. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say A2/index.html. See that? So if I go back now, it is rendering an assignment 2, right? If I click on it, right, it navigates to my other page. I can now go back, right, and I can click on assignment 2, and boom, it goes in here. Make sense? Episode with me? All right, so yeah, so let's commit this, right, and let's publish this, see if this works, right? So let's, for example, go here and say git status. It says that I have a new directory, I have a modified index. So I'm going to say add everything and say git commit, and say added, removed React, added link to assignment 2, and say git push. Okay, so this is going to push this content to my GitHub, and also Netlify. Netlify is going to be listening for changes in my repository, and it's going to deploy all my content to the remote code. Let's refresh. The refresh. Okay, it's still the old code. It might still be deploying. Let's see. Let's go look at deploys. There it is. See that? The remove React added link to assignment 2. So it is building, apparently. It might still be building. Let's go all the way down. Yes, site. Okay, site is live. So it looks like it completed. Let's see if that is the case. Let's refresh. There we go. Right. So this is exactly what we have locally. Right. So in local, we have this, and in the remote, we also have exactly the same thing, a little bigger. And I can navigate to assignment 2. Perfect. Okay. So now TAs can see that you indeed did the heading exercise. Yes. Right. And give you 5 points. Awesome. All right. So let's keep going. So then the assignment keeps going and asks you to do other things, learning about paragraphs. Right. So for instance, there's an example, right? right? So I just copy this, right? Copy, and then you can just come here and just add to your assignment. Not that one, sorry. HTML, there we go. We're going to paste in here, just our paragraph. We can take a look at it locally. Assignment number 2. That now it has our paragraph. I'm going to put this on the right side here, right? And my IDE on the left side, right? And this is what we've been working on. I'm going to make this a little smaller so we can check to see our progress, right? There's my code here. And I can go back to the assignment and just go one at a time, right? Copying and pasting. So this first assignment, I'm sorry, very specific, right? Do this, copy this, paste it over there, do that, right? And the intent is for you to practice certain basic skills that you should know by the end of the assignment, right? Once you feel comfortable with these skills, right, you're expected to apply these skills to the Twitter and the challenge parts of the assignment where you do this on your own, okay? So you're going to be working through the headings and the paragraphs. You're going to do some lists, right? So for instance, there are some ordered lists, and also making the point. A lot of these assignments are going to make the point that if you have just plain old text, right, it's not going to render like you expect. You have to put these opening and closing tags around so that it formats the way you expect it. Can you show the IDE page again? Yes. Right. So there's the IDE. This is A2 HTML. I'm going to close all the other tabs. So we're focusing on A2 slash index.html. Right. Now we are running it from the root, right, from this, and then navigating into this, right? Now there's no need to have to work, within even starting the server, right? Notice that we have the server running. We can even stop the server, right? If I go to the server now, I refresh, notice it's going to give me a 404. Okay, and the reason is that it's hitting the server, trying to ask for that document, but the server is no longer running. Right? And the point I want to try and make is that the documents that we're working on currently, right? Not until we get to React.js, HTML, JavaScript, CSS, right? All these documents, right, don't need React.js, right? They can work with just the plain old browser, right? So for instance, if I go back to my index HTML, even my root one, this one, I can run it without the server running, right? I can say right click, I want to execute this index.html document all by itself, right? Because it doesn't need the server, right? It's just the browser rendering an HTML document, right? And the browsers already know how to render HTML documents regardless of the server, right? You can open it up from the file system, right? So we can say run it. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Did it open it? No. Wait, run it. Why are you not running? Wait, what about this one? Run this. Oh, interesting. Why are you not running it? Oh, that's interesting. Oh, there must be a weird configuration on my IDE that it's not letting me open it. Let me check. I can look at my 2022 fall web dev 610. We go to public. There's index. if I double click on it, huh? Oh, stop. Where? Huh? Why are you not running? You might need to blah blah blah. Click on those browser icons. Yeah, normally you don't have to. Why is it forcing me to do that? Windows cannot find Firefox. Oh, okay. I think there. Yeah, I had a I think my IDE can't find certain things. Open. All right, I'm going to fix my IDE. I'm not quite sure what's wrong with my IDE, why I can't find the browsers. But in general, your IDE should be able to, right click on it, right, and execute all by yourself, right, and just if not, that's fine. You can do all on the server. All right. Anyway, let's go through some other exercises. So I copied here's some examples of doing unordered lists. I'm sorry, ordered lists on, I'm just going to paste it here. And some unordered lists. I'm just going to copy it, paste it here. Now, please, I suggest you don't just breeze through these and just copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. I do add some context here. Also, the accompanying book that I suggested, or any of them, will go into more detail on each one of these elements. So please take it as an opportunity to learn more or experiment. Feel free to add your own content here and maybe your own version of this exercise. Come up with your own line item or ordered list, unordered list of your own. Come up with your own example. Again, just to practice on how this works. Right. Notice, for instance, one of the things that I'd like you to point out is that this UL tag. Notice that it has an opening UL and a closing UL, right? And then inside you have other tags inside. See that? So obviously these can be nested, and eventually this is going to parse in the DOM as a node that contains 5 other subnodes, right? And so we say, for instance, that all these LIs are inside of the body of the parent elements, right? Just like this text, right, is the body of this LI element, right? Now, some elements have bodies, like this one, LI has content as the body content of the main content, and some don't, right? So for instance, we're going to see a little later some elements that don't have bodies; they just have the tag. Like, for instance, here this image, right? This image tag doesn't have a body, right? There's no opening img image tag and a closing tag, still an element, right? Instead, it's all configured using attributes, right? Saying, what is the image file that I want to display? What's the width and the size of the image, right? But there's no body, right? So notice that the tag, it's has a slash at the end, and it's referred to as a self-closing tag, right? Meaning that single tag is at the same time an opening tag and a closing tag, right? And there's only one of them, right? A self-closing tag. Still an element, still a node on the DOM hierarchy. Let's see, a question on the chat. You might need to is the challenge part a walk along like labs? Yes, the challenge part. Some assignments are walk along, meaning we tell you exactly what to do, or some of them are not. Some of them are, just do this on your own. Some of them are in between, where they'll show you an example, and then they'll ask you to do your own version of that example, right? Where you have to use a little bit of your imagination and build something on your own. If you experiment, yes, certainly you can experiment. You're always welcome to experiment. As long as what we ask you to do is there, you can add to it, or you can modify it in such a ways that it's still recognizable of what we ask you to do. Is it like the tag word? Okay, yeah. So the image exercise, careful. The image one has a trick. It's a little tricky. Let me restart the server. Let me restart the server. It's only tricky because I'm not giving you an image. You have to find an image on your own. So for instance, if you look at the tag for the image, it's broken, right? It's referencing to an image file that doesn't exist. And the image is presumably called my picture JPEG. And I believe what I asked you to do is to find an image of your own that it's actually, this is the exercise. This is the exercise. So let me do that and paste that in there. Right. And so if I render it now, notice that one of the images renders. One of the images renders because notice the code, right? The code says image tag, blah blah blah, image, img, not oh my god, it's img, not omg. It says the width attribute of how wide should it be, and also gives a src source, meaning where to find this image. And this image is found somewhere on the internet. So somebody out there in some server called staradvisor.com is hosting a file called Web1 Starship Gap 2. Okay, and the browser goes and fetches that image, right, and then renders it here locally on in my browser, right? So this is something that's linked from somebody else's machine. Whereas the other image, the Tesla bot, is not going out to a separate server. Instead, it's expecting that the image is locally available, right? And notice that it's not there, right? If notice that H2, right? It's this index HTML is looking for a file called TeslaBot in the same directory, right? It can't find it, and that's why when it renders broken. See that? Right. That means that we need to find an image. So let's do that. I'm going to look for a TeslaBot. So TeslaBot, and looking for an image. And so I'm just going to grab any of these. So I'll grab this. Look at the view file and save it. And I'm going to put it in where my directories are, right? So where it's expecting it to be. So fall, web dev 610, right? Into my public A2, and I'll call it just TeslaBot. So TeslaBot. There we go. So now it matches the name that we were looking for. I should be able to refresh my screen. Let's refresh. And there's my image, okay? It's not quite the same image as the assignment asks, but that's fine, doesn't matter. Find an image and use that. Let's see, is it okay? All right, so just a word on these tags, the width tag and the height. Notice that this image, the first one, is setting the width only, whereas for the TeslaBot, we're setting the height, okay? And I just want to show you something. So if I do this again and I load the TeslaBot again, notice that it loads the image twice. See that? But if I change the size of this and I say 100 and I refresh, okay, notice that they're side by side. Notice that the height is obviously half, right? This is half of the 200. But notice that the width also became half of what the original was. See that? And so that's a default behavior of browsers, is that when you specify only one of the widths, the other width is scaled to fit and to maintain the ratio. Same thing with the with this image here, right? If I copy that and they're both 400, I can change the width this to be 200. Right? Notice that this is now the width is half of the original, but also is the height. Okay. So to maintain the ratio. Now, if you put both width and height, you have to be careful, right? Because if you don't use a combination of width and height that match the original ratio, you will skew your image, which is fine if that's what you want to do, right? So for instance, I can provide here a height of the same width, okay? And here I can provide the same as a height, right? Also 100 pixels. And if I refresh, notice that the image has now been, extruded or it's now deformed, right, to fit the size of this new ratio, where now it's square, right, on both sides, right, and so it's not the original ratio. And you can force that if that's what you want to do, right? What's the question here? What is the difference between pixels and percentage? Yeah, so you can also provide sizes by percentage, right? So Tesla bot, you can say 50%. So 50%, let's see what that does. So if I refresh, height, no, not height. Sorry, width, let's do the width. There we go. Okay, so notice that this Tesla bot is half of something, okay? And it, and let's see what it's half of. So notice that it's half of what? It's half of the size of the overall width of the screen, right? So if I make this smaller, notice that the 50% it grows proportionally to the height width of the screen. You see that? And it's too big to fit, right? And so if I make it small enough, notice that this here doesn't fit, right? And so it wraps onto the next width on the next screen, right? And if I keep making it smaller and smaller and smaller, right, eventually, right, the other one gets smaller and smaller. Make sense? Okay. It could be the percentage. So it's a percentage of the width of its parent element. So its parent element, right now the parent element is body. So whatever the size of the screen, so body is the screen, right? And whatever the size of the screen is, then half of that. Now, this image could be inside of something else. And if that something else is smaller than the body, then this will be 50% of whatever the parent element is. Make sense? Okay. Whereas px is, exact pixel, right? Exact pixel size. Okay. All right. So forms, we ask you to play around with forms. Okay. Where you create some fields, some text fields. All right, and play around with some of that. So that renders down below. There's a form, right, where you can type, right? There's a username, first name, password, right? You can't see, and so for instance, there's labels. Now, a word about labels and input fields to point out. Input fields, like the name suggests, is for you to type something, right? And input fields, by default, they are single lines of, right, where you can type just a single line of text, okay? And notice that they are self-closing, right? They don't have like an opening and closing tag. It's just a one single tag, which is both opening and closing. It has several attributes. One is the ID attribute, which is a unique identifier, right, that is unique within the page, right? And the IDE would highlight it if you use the same ID twice. So, for instance, if I use the same ID elsewhere over here, say, right, the IDE would get mad at me and highlight it and say, "Oh, you have a syntax error." So no, right? You should not do that. And And these IDs, most of the times they are useless, but there are some really cool things about them, right? One of the things is that you can label your input fields and to say that this piece of text, username, this name here, is referring to this input field, right? So notice that this is the same as this. See that? And this is going to be one of the quizzes. I'm going to ask you, what do you use? How do you make these labels reference this input field, right? And so I'll try to trip you up saying, oh, you make the IDs the same, or you make the names the same, and blah, 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 right? So yeah, don't fall for that. The for attribute of labels has to match the ID attribute of the input field, right? And you might say, well, why? Why would you have one reference the other? Notice that I don't really need this label if I notice if I just have the username. So say I grab that, right, and I have just username, and I comment that out. Notice that if I refresh, right, there's no difference. It just renders like username, right, and my input field. So my username and my input field. Okay. What you get, right, if you instead of using this just simple text, and instead use labels, and I save that, and then I refresh. Oops, if I refresh that, notice what happens now when I click on the username. See that? If I click on the username, notice that my input field got a focus. See that? So I click on password. Notice that it gets focused. I click on first name, it gets focused, right? And this might not be a big deal for input fields, but it becomes a big deal when you are using smaller fields, maybe like a checkbox or radio buttons that are very hard to click, right? So if you could associate a bigger piece of text, right, where I can just click on the text and that the whole checkbox gets checked, that improves the the usability of your page, especially when these screens are, by the most part, they're going to be visited using mobile phones, right? So it's on a small screen. Whatever you can do to increase the clickable area, right, the better, right? Users are not going to have to peck at your screen, right, to hit that checkbox or radio button or slider, right? If you can make it as big as possible, one way is to use the labels, right, to increase the entire overall clickable area. Okay, and again, that's going to be a question on the quiz. Let's see other things here. There's more, there's a whole bunch of type of date widgets, text box, right? Drop downs. Just go through each one of these, right? Copy and paste them. Play around with your own radio buttons. One note on radio buttons. Radio buttons are mutually exclusive by default, meaning that right, if I have these comedy drama, so they're meant for you to choose just one of them, not multiple, right? Checkboxes are meant for you to check and select several options, right? But radio buttons are meant for single options, right? And so let me just show you real quick this example. Now, all these form examples are meant to be completed inside of the form tag. I'm not sure if I explained that in the assignment, but let's make sure. So if I refresh, right, there's my radio buttons. And notice that if I click on each one, it unselects the other. See that? That's what we mean by mutually exclusive, right? Selecting one unselects the other. Now, that behavior of selecting one, unselecting the other is not for free. It's not for free. Yes, quizzes start week 3. Correct. Yep. I think week 3. So that's not for free. And the way this is achieved, that radio buttons are mutually exclusive, is because they all have the same name. Look at that. See, all these radio buttons have the same name. If they wouldn't have the same name, they would not be mutually exclusive. This could be called maybe 1, and there's 2, and there's 3, and there's 4, right? And now I refresh. Notice that I can select multiple. See that? And that's not what I want. That's not what I want. right? I want them to be mutually exclusive. And the way the browser knows which are related to one another is by the names, by matching the names. Now I can make groups of radio buttons that are mutually exclusive amongst each other. Maybe I can have this, genre 1 and genre 1. So these two are mutually exclusive, and these two might be mutually exclusive, right? You can either like comedy or drama, but not both, right? Or you can like science fiction or fantasy, but not both, right? So if I refresh now, notice that now I can click comedy. Notice that it didn't do anything to the science fiction. But drama, notice that they are mutually exclusive. Same thing with fantasy and science fiction. They're mutually exclusive, but they don't interact with the other group, right? So just to point that out. And let's see, checkboxes, same thing. All right, so these exercises you need to complete, right? All of them, all the paragraphs and the list, the tables and the form, blah 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 blah, and it tells you how many points each. Okay. Okay, so in the Twitter a portion of the assignment, you are asked to do this portion on your own, right? And to create a directory, a separate directory, a Twitter directory, so in public, and say Twitter. Oops. Let's see. So you would have a Twitter, new directory, Twitter. Okay, and then in Twitter, have a file, I believe is navigation.html. Okay, so ask you to create a navigation file that allows you to navigate in different places. It has to look like this, like an unordered list of hyperlinks. Okay, and so there's a couple examples here on how to create hyperlinks. And they have to reference these documents, right? Now, all these documents don't exist yet, right? Obviously, these pages don't exist yet. The labels need to be this, right? So notice that it matches these labels, and that if you click them, this is where they would go, right? Now, these other documents don't exist, so that if you click on them, it'll go to 404, right? And that's fine, right? Because these documents don't exist yet. We're going to be creating them as we go in the next couple of assignments, right? So we already know how to create a UL, and we know how to create a line item, and a hyperlink we already know. So this would be href, home.html, and then home, right? So that's the first one right there, right? So that's Twitter, and you're going to create several of these, right? So home, explore, and this is explore. And then notifications. So there's notifications, and this would be notifications. Okay, and then we ask you to also, just like you had added to the index page a link to your second assignment. Please add a link to Twitter so that TAs can navigate there. So let's do that too. Let's go to our index page and create a link to, I guess this should be a UL, right? Right, so this should be all line items as well, right? For assignment 2 and the Twitter application, like that, right? So if we go back to the index and refresh, not assignment 2, but it should be called Twitter, and I click on Twitter, that didn't work, huh? Oh, yeah, it's going to the wrong place. It's supposed to go to Twitter and then navigation. There we go. Let's go back, refresh. If I go to Twitter, there we go. Let's go to the navigation. Obviously, these are all broken. If I click on home, it's going to take me. Oh, wait, what? Oh, okay. So HMTL explore. I guess I have a broken link. Oh, probably the application is set up so that the error page is the root page. Probably that's the configuration. Anyway, yeah, get that going. We ask you to create a home screen, right at the home. So, for instance, here in Twitter, you have the navigation, and we ask you to do that very first navigation, which is home.html. HTML explore, and so this is home. So home should look like this. Okay, it should say home. It should say a heading, a first heading, and this tells you what the requirements are. Actually, it's supposed to look like that. So this is a heading 1, so Twitter. So this is H1, Twitter. Then some heading 2 for home. Okay, let's refresh. Click on it. There. What is wrong with my home link? Something's wrong with my home link. HMTL. Let me spell it. HTML. All right. So refresh. Click on home. There's our home. So this Twitter home. As you work through the example, right, needs to look like this, right? Twitter home, an image. This image can be, your own image, right? I'm going to, for now, I'm going to use one of my Twitter bots. So I'm going to do image, and my Twitter bot is, where was it? Is equal to, let's say I'm going to go up, then down to A2, down to Tesla bot. There we go. And the width, I believe I asked you to use 48 pixels, and the height also to be 48 pixels. Let's see. Refresh. There's our image. Very good. Then I ask you to add a text box that has a placeholder saying what's happening, right? So a text area that has a placeholder that says what's happening. Let's see. Let's refresh. There it is. But we wanted to move down one over a new line. So I'm going to create a break. There we go. Refresh. There we go. And you're just going to go one at a time. Ask you to put a file field. So that's where, presumably that's where we would be able to upload our banner or upload our image. Right. So this would be a input of type file, and refresh. Is our file again? Want to break it up. So the breakup could be used with a ruler, horizontal ruler. Can break that up. There we go, like that. Maybe add another horizontal ruler below it. There you go. And then a hyperlink looks like these are line items, like an unordered list, right, of several tweets, right? The tweet here by Alice, another tweet by Bob. I believe in the assignment we ask you to play around with other users, right? Use other text and whatnot, and then create several tweets of your own. I think I asked you to create 2 or 3 tweets entirely on your own. Then I ask you to create several other files, right? Twitter, but an individual tweet, a profile screen, a profile editor screen, okay? And then the challenge for the graduate folks, right, ask you to play around with iframes, being able to embed content, somebody else's page onto your page. That's pretty cool for embedding videos, YouTube videos, or this entire either Google Doc, or you can embed an entire slideshow. Let's say this is taking me back to what websites looked like when I was in high school. Yep, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So this is very, very basic um, a skill set, right? That again, you might have many of you might have already seen a lot of this, right? But I am not assuming any skills whatsoever. What we're going to be able to do is understand that this gets parsed, gets generated, and parsed into the DOM, right? And then the responsibility of using JavaScript or using React.js is to be able to manipulate that DOM, right? So that we can dynamically render this programmatically, right? And be able to generate this on the fly, right? The intent is that right now this is all hard coded, right? This eventually what will happen is that instead of this being hard coded, this will live in a database, right? And the front end, the React.js front end, will use a web API, hit that a server that you're going to write. And the server is going to ask the database for an array of tweets, right? And that array is going to come back as a JSON object array, which then your React.js code is going to programmatically iterate over that array, right? And it's going to render this and display this in the DOM, right? Also, you're going to be able to create new tweets that are going to send and post a JSON object to the server. The server is going to store it in the database, right? And then your user interface is going to refresh to represent and the new post that you just generated. Okay. Anyway, yes. If you could start up, working on this new assignment. Please go over some of the slides that I did go over. I'm going to go over it with you together on Wednesday, which is going to be mostly just a review of the material that we covered today. But in particular, I also want to discuss if you could have a chance to take a look at by next lecture, if you could read up on the project requirements as well, right? So that we can, we're going to discuss this in detail, next lecture, and we'll discuss the details on how, what it is that we expect you to do to implement for the final project. Okay. All right. Excellent. Any questions? All right. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Oh, let's see. How are the points on the assignment adjusted for graduate students? I may have missed it, but it looks like. Yes, exactly. So usually the labs are always worth 50 points. The Twitter is worth 50 points, which adds to 100. And that's all the undergrads need to do. The graduate students have another 50 points, right? The challenge is worth 50 points. So your entire number of points is 150, which is 100%. Right? To get 100% on the assignment, you have to do all your 150 points. So for the undergrads, it's a little easier to know that if they did 70 points, they're going to get a 70%. For the graduate students, it's a little more involved, right? You have to adjust it to 100%. Yeah, everything's adjusted to 100%. Yep. All right, excellent. The section 1 and section 6 people could form a group. Yes, you could have folks from different sections together in their own teams, in the same team. But we'll have to maintain that relationships of which folks in which section are related to which folks in some other section. We'll have to support that outside of Canvas. I can't seem to have a way for Canvas to be able to see groups across multiple sections. So we'll have to maintain that on our own. So we want to work on the project by ourselves. Do we need to? Yes, even if you are working on your own and with no one else, you do need to be in a team. It could be just a team of one, because that's the only way that we can actually give you a grade. Yeah. There will be going out a form where you can fill out and so which people are in which team and in which section are together. We need to email right now a different section. No, you don't. When will these grades reflect when will these grades reflect? Immediately when they're graded, you'll have it updated on your Canvas. All right then. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, you should see the assignment within a week of submitting. You should see grades. If you complete A2, you can move on to A3. Yes. You're always now the assignments that are not yet out, that I have not covered yet, are always subject to change. For maybe we identified a particular issue in class, or somebody notified me, so there might be a risk of you moving forward too fast, and then some things change, and then you have to do the rework. Yeah, no, we're gonna have to keep track. Yang Yi, we need to keep track of which folks are in which section, which group outside of Canvas. I don't know how to do that. So probably would have a form where folks can fill out and say, what students are in which section. Yeah, yeah, Priyesh, we know that. Yeah, there's Canvas doesn't seem to have a mechanism to put students in separate sections in the same team. We're gonna have to keep track of that separately outside of Canvas, Priyesh. Yeah. All right, everyone. Good night. Bye bye.